This is more Doug DeMuro, and today this is a big video because I have returned from my giant road trip with my new Land Rover Defender from California to Massachusetts and back. 7,000 miles, just under 6,938 miles total. I really put it through its paces. Now mine is probably not the highest mileage new Defender. Some of these were delivered last spring in Europe, but it's probably the only one that has seen both the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans. So this video is going to be in three parts. I'm going to start with what I liked, then I'm going to move on to what I didn't like about my new Defender, and then I will talk about what broke. The windshield broke. I got a rock chip in Texas that cracked the windshield and then the crack sort of spread, but something actually did break in the Defender itself, which I will get to in a second. I also have a very, very controversial opinion coming about the new Defender, which I will get to in just a minute. So anyway, let's get started. Okay, so 7,000 mile road trip, insane. I always say the best way to break in a new car is to take it on a road trip. You will quickly get acquainted with what you like, what you don't like, what could be improved with the car. And so I'm going to start with what I liked. I really love the off-road equipment and the capability. I have now off-roaded my new Defender twice. Here in San Diego on an old truck trail with some pretty sharp rocks, but also some steep inclines. And then on the East Coast on Nantucket, not really that much off-roading, but a lot of time spent driving in the sand, probably 70, 80 miles on the beach in the sand, and going through some serious mud puddles that were up to the bottom of the doors. And it handled it, and it's incredible. It never feels like it's close to getting stuck. It feels tremendously sure-footed, very capable, but I also just love the equipment. The old Defenders, everything was very simple. You just shifted the locker on, you had good ground clearance, all the basics for off-roading. But the new one, I got cameras that can see under the car. I have the wade sensor that tells me how deep the puddle I'm in is. It's really two lockers, middle and rear, and they're automatic. They're just going at all times, turning on and off. The car does all that. It's really impressive. All the equipment and the capability, it feels very sure-footed if you're going to off-road it. I was really surprised by that. It does feel as capable as you would want for a Defender. Okay, next up, other things I like. Number one, great driving position. One of the big things that people remarked to me about seeing a new Defender for the first time is that it's bigger than they thought. And the pictures, they make all the press pictures look like it's too dainty and too luxurious. But when you actually come up next to one, it feels big. It has good presence. And that helps you out with driving position. You sit taller than you might think. It doesn't really look like a normal crossover in person. It feels taller, it feels bigger. And that also translates to another thing I like, which is great interior room. You drive a car 7,000 miles cross country and back, interior room's really important. Otherwise it'd be uncomfortable, obviously, but I wasn't. I felt like good room, both front and back. I had several passengers with me when I got to my destination, and everybody commented it was a roomy, comfortable vehicle. Okay, next up, power. My Defender is the 6-cylinder. I really wanted to get the steel wheels. Those are only offered with the 4-cylinder. Eventually, my desire for more power won out, and I chose the 6-cylinder and alloy wheels. I'm glad I did that. The 6-cylinder just has the power you need to actually pass and drive on the highway and feel confident and go where you need to go without any worries about planning stuff, planning passes, and that sort of thing. The 4-cylinder, I haven't driven one yet, but just based on what it seems like on paper, it's probably pretty slow. And the 6-cylinder doesn't exactly feel lightning fast, but it's more than adequate, and so I'm glad I chose the 6-cylinder. Now, as for fuel economy, it was about average. I returned 17.4 miles per gallon on this trip, and a lot of people online about, oh, I can't believe only 17.4. But I also averaged 78 miles an hour over 6,900 miles. Now, people say, well, my Duramax cruises at 78 all day long and I get better mileage than that. Well, cruising at 78 and averaging 78 are two very different things. Because of time, you have to pull off the road to get gas, to get food, to, two trucks are passing each other in a construction zone. You end up, an average of 78 is not achieved by going 78. I went quite a bit faster than that. And as a result, 17.4 miles per gallon, not a great number, but with that average speed, I think it's pretty good. I think if I was going 60, 65 the whole time, probably could have been in the 22 mile per gallon range. Still not great, but as average, it's what I expected. Next thing I like about the new Defender, Safari windows. I love the Safari windows in the back. I wish they were closer up. They're over the cargo area, which would benefit passengers in the third row, but I don't have the third row seat. And even if you do, you're not going to put people back there very often. It's very small. I wish they were right next to the second row of seats, but they are cool. Everybody comments on them. Next, I love the rear view camera. The rear view mirror is a camera, and you can switch it from mirror to camera and back. And I thought occasionally I would be switching it. I never do. I just use it as a camera. And in fact, you don't really need to wipe your rear window because you never use the rear window. I was wiping the rear window occasionally here and there so that people didn't think that I was just completely irresponsible driving around with a covered in mud rear window, but I don't use it. I was only using the camera to look out the back, the rear view mirror, and it's fantastic. Great visibility, excellent field of view. I really hope that this feature becomes available in every car before too long. It's a great safety feature. Next up, a few other things I like. One, I really like the washer fluid being built into the windshield wiper. So instead of the fluid being mounted here and shooting out from the top of the hood, it actually is mounted on the wiper. So as the wiper goes across the windshield, the fluid squirts out right in front of it, and so it's always kind of tracing the wiper, and that's a really good way to do it. That's how they all should be. Next up, really love the built-in air compressor. This is a feature you'll really want if you go off-roading a lot, because you're often lowering the air pressure in your tires if you're driving on sand or on rocky terrain so that rocks don't puncture your tires. And airing up and airing down the tire is always an annoyance for off-roaders because you just have to sit there forever and measure the PSI and sit there and measure and sit and measure. And same deal when you're filling back up, you got to find a pump and do all that, and it's a disaster. Having a built-in air compressor is really nice, and this one is especially easy. You just dial in the pressure you want, and then it pumps up the tires to get to that pressure. Something else I learned, it also deflates the tires. So if you want to go down to 15 PSI to drive on soft sand, or 12, you just dial the pressure, you plug in the hose, and then it will deflate until it gets to that point. You don't have to deflate manually and check yourself. So no more waiting in line for a pump. After a long day of off-roading, you can just do it yourself. And I know that's a feature that's available in the aftermarket, but it's cool to just have it easily built into the cargo area, powered by the car, no problems, no worries, it's always right there. Next up, a feature I love, surprisingly, the 6th seat. So my Defender has 3 seats in the back like most cars, but also 3 seats in the front. There is a front bench seat with a front middle seat with a seat belt, and I used all 6 seats for about 500 miles of my journey. When I went to Nantucket, where I was going, I had my wife, my dog, and then 3 friends also met us there. So there were 6 of us total, including the dog. And so someone always was sitting in that front middle seat. And truthfully, it was useful, and it was practical, and it was surprisingly easy to use. We used it constantly, and I have no qualms about it, and I'm glad that I ordered it. It worked well, and it's relatively large and relatively comfortable, surprisingly so. So all that stuff said, those are the things that I like. All that stuff said, it was a fantastic road trip car. Really cool off-road, very comfortable, good cargo space, good passenger space. It was great and amazing, actually. And this is where my controversial opinion is going to come in. I think that the old Defender, not the new Defender, is the lifestyle toy. I think it's the old Defender that's kind of the lifestyle look cool toy, because the truth is, the new Defender does every single thing better than the old Defender except look cool. Now, this is a controversial opinion because when the new Defender came out, a lot of people brought in, oh, it's just a lifestyle luxury SUV. The old one, that's for real off-roaders. I don't agree. I've off-roaded both extensively now, pretty extensively. The new one's better. It's a better off-roader. It's a more practical overall vehicle. It's more versatile. It has more ground clearance. It has better tech. It has better off-roading equipment. It is better objectively in every way, except it isn't as cool looking. So the new Defender, if you really want to go pretty far off the pavement, I think the new Defender is the better choice. If you want to look cooler, that's where your old Defender comes in. This is a really controversial opinion. The Land Rover forums already hate me. They're going to light up and say, oh, this guy's a total jerk. But the new one is the actual versatile, practical off-roading vehicle. It's the old one that is kind of the lifestyle, look at me, I'm cool kind of toy. That's just my perspective, having now spent a lot of time in the new one and actually used it with its capabilities. But anyway, next up, I want to talk about some of the stuff that I don't like about the new Defender. Some stuff that just kind of irked me. I kept a list going as I was driving on this trip, and a lot of people who are interested in new Defenders have reached out and said, what do you like? What do you not like? Has it been reliable? So here's the answer. If you're interested, these are the things that just hit me I don't really love. Number one, the door lock placement on the driver's door. It's placed right here, and when you're on a long road trip, you want to spread out your knees or just stretch, you end up hitting the door lock every single time. It is bad placement for that, and you lock and unlock the doors fairly constantly, and it's kind of annoying. When you're just driving around town, it's not really a big deal, but 3-4 hours in a car and you want to just kind of take a stretch, boom, doors are locked or unlocked or whatever. Next up, here's one that I really don't like, the mute button situation in the new Defender. So I'm driving along, it's late at night, I'm driving through Texas. with my wife, and we get gas, we drive back, get back into the car, and go play the music, and it's not playing. And I press it on, on the car screen, it doesn't come up. And I press it on my phone, it doesn't come up, and I'm hitting it, play, pause. Play, and it pauses. Play, and it pauses. And I'm like, what is going on? So I disconnect my phone, reconnect it, still won't work. And I'm thinking, great. This was on the drive out. It's day one. And I'm thinking, we've got a software glitch. I'm not gonna be able to listen to music for the next 3 weeks. And what a disaster. Typical Land Rover. So after playing with it forever, what I determine is that it's muted. But there's no obvious sign on the screen in the center or in the gauge cluster that it's been muted. It doesn't tell you. And simply turning up the volume doesn't unmute it, even though it does in every other car and electronic device. Just turning the volume knob will unmute a muted volume. Not here. You actually have to see that it's muted, press the button, which is the on-off button, not even a button marked mute, and then you can turn up the volume and actually play music. And I was just mystified by this, just a ridiculously bad design. It should at least tell you that it's muted, or when you turn up the volume, it should unmute, but it doesn't, and that's bad design. It's a small thing, but it's just not all that well thought through. And I actually came up with a few other examples of stuff just not being all that well thought through. And it sort of hit me, I had this Kia Stinger for 10 months or so before the new Defender, but before that I had a Mercedes for 3 years. And Mercedes just thinks stuff through better than Land Rover, and that was clear. One other example, it doesn't tell you anywhere in the car that the rear wiper is on. It's a little thing at the end of the stalk. You turn it on and then it's on, but it doesn't let you know that it's on. So I drove for like 3 hours once with the rear wiper on, and I don't see it because my rear view mirror is a camera. There's no indication anywhere, and it's like, that's the kind of thing. My Mercedes station wagon had a little thing that told you, hey, your wiper's on. Another example, not quite thinking through the details. The new Defender, like a lot of cars, has a hold system. You come up to a stoplight and the car will hold itself in place so you don't have to keep your foot on the brake, which can, I guess, just kind of get tiring. Well, in most new cars that have that system, the brake lights stay on because you're sitting at a stoplight. But in the new Defender, the brake lights stay on for maybe 5 seconds and then they turn off. So you're just sitting at a stoplight, it's night, even day, and your brake lights aren't on, even though you have the hold feature in place. Again, poor design. Mercedes, my old E63 wagon had the same feature, brake lights always stayed on. Another example, not thinking through stuff all that well, there's a button on the steering wheel that is configurable, this little diamond button. A lot of cars have this, and a lot of cars let you configure all sorts of different things. New Defender only lets you configure like 4 things, and it's stuff you don't even want. I don't remember where it is, but I changed it to be play and pause for the stereo, but that's not something that even really is relevant all that often. I want to configure that button to pull up the camera system so that when I'm coming up to a parking space, I can activate the cameras without having to go over to the center screen and find them. But you can't do that. You can't do much with that configurable button. So even though it's configurable, not really all that helpful. A couple other things I didn't like. Number one, there's no recovery hooks standard on the new Defender. That's a big deal. If you actually buy this and plan to off-road it, as I do, they're not there. You have to get them installed, which I think is a big mistake for a vehicle trying to be taken seriously as an off-roader. You gotta have recovery hooks. And I'm driving along on the beach and I come up on a family in a Nissan Pathfinder that's just stuck up to the hubs in sand. And so I'm like, yeah, no problem. I got a tow strap. I'll pull you out. I do this all the time. Well, then I go looking for my recovery hooks. They're not there. I don't have a tow hitch. I didn't order one because I just assumed there'd be hooks. And then I say, well, good luck. Air down. Keep digging. Bye-bye. What am I supposed to do? Cars like this need recovery hooks. I'm going to have them installed, but they should be coming from the factory considering that it's like the off-roader. 2 other things, didn't really like all that much. Number one, the parking sensors should be easier to turn off. You're driving off-road and you're going through a big puddle, water splashes up, or you're going past shrubs. Well, parking sensors sometimes beep. And it's like, hey, I'm off-roading. Yeah, stuff's going to get near the car. Stuff's going to brush up against the car. That's how it is. The parking sensors need to be easier to just, you push a button and they're off. That's how it was in my old Range Rover. Here, you got to go into the infotainment system, find the menu, deal with all that. And of course, it defaults back to on every time you turn on the car. And so that's kind of it's just an annoyance. Finally, the last thing that I didn't like, this weather stripping is coming off on the door. This actually, the day I bought the car, I noticed it was falling off. And about every 10 times you open the door, it kind of comes off, and you just slide it back on. It takes literally a quarter of a second, but it's happening. And during this trip, it started to happen on the other side as well. And I mention this only because it kind of shows you quality, attention to detail, not quite as good as it could be. Weather stripping on a door shouldn't be falling off the new car. And I can just glue it, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to stick some glue on it, and it's going to stay on forever. But the point is, you know, the factory should have done that. That's the kind of thing they gotta catch before it leaves the factory. But those things I don't like, they're relatively small. And we're talking about door lock placement and how the mute button works. Once you figure that it doesn't tell you the rear wiper is on, once you figure this stuff out, not a big deal. The important stuff, the driving position, the power, the interior room, you know, the technology, the capability, that stuff I really loved, and overall, very impressed, and I think it was good. But you're probably wondering, most importantly, what broke? Something. First off, like I mentioned, the windshield. So I'm driving along just east of Dallas on my way to the East Coast, and I hear a chip and notice immediately the windshield has been hit by a rock and it's starting to spread. And obviously I'm a little nervous because if it spreads all the way across the windshield, you have a real visibility issue. But I got lucky. It hit the windshield, spread about 6 inches in the first hour, and it only spread about 6 more inches through the rest of the trip, which is about 5,000 more miles. So I got pretty lucky. It's about 12, maybe 16 inches of a crack. That happens, and it especially, obviously this isn't really the car's fault, something breaking, but I wanted to mention it especially happens to vehicles like the new Defender and like this G-Wagon that have flat upright windshields. In fact, the prior weekend before leaving on this trip, I got a rock chip in my G-Wagon windshield, same exact thing, just driving along, rock came up and hit it. I got lucky in the G, it doesn't look like it's going to spread, but in the Defender it has already spread beyond repair, and so I have to replace the windshield. Now the good thing is, you know, new car like this, you're nervous. Windshield replacement cost is one thing, but is there even going to be one available? Am I going to have to wait a year or 6 months for windshield? Turns out no, the dealer said 3-week wait time, which seems about normal. It's a heated windshield. It has actual heating coils going through it. So that seems pretty reasonable. And I had them order it, and it should be here probably by the time you're watching this video in the next few days. $1,600 to replace the windshield, by the way. The thing that broke was the sunroof. I used it. I don't use the sunroof much because I have convertibles now, and after you have a convertible, sunroof just is such a letdown. But anyway, I used the sunroof a couple times when it was warmer, and then went to open it one day, wouldn't open. And I went to open it the next day, wouldn't open. I tried today, weeks later, wouldn't open. It seems like the switch just isn't powering the sunroof. It was working, isn't now. So that's kind of it. Now, it's kind of funny. I'll take it to the dealer. I'm sure it'll be a warranty claim, and they'll fix it. But you know, it's something that broke. 7,000 miles, new car, sunroof broke. But, you know, I don't know. I've had a lot of Land Rovers, and if that's all that's going to happen, I think we're doing okay. Not that I excuse it, and I don't use the sunroof often, but that also doesn't excuse it. It's an expensive new car. I paid for that feature. It shouldn't break that soon. But that's why warranties exist, and you buy a car in the first year, you do expect some foibles, and that was one. And I think it's kind of funny because classic Land Rover. I drive the car all the way across the country, putting strain on all the, you know, the components, suspension and tires and the engine and all that. And then, you know, I'm driving thousands of miles in a day, 12, 15 hours in a day, all this stuff. And then I take it off-roading, mud squirts up everywhere, water gets shot everywhere, there's stuff all over the car. And what breaks? The sunroof, which I use twice and which has no bearing on anything. But of course, Land Rover, that's the thing that breaks. Not any of the stuff that's actually getting stressed. What a classic Land Rover problem, you know, something totally unrelated but annoying is what ends up breaking. I was lucky that it broke closed, of course, because driving home with the sunroof open would have been a disaster. But it did break closed, so it's closed now, and I'll have the dealer, you know, fix it when they're replacing the windshield. But that's it. That is my trip. Overall, very impressed. I really like the Defender, and I'm really happy I got to break it in like I did. I got to really experience it, see what it was really like, spend all that time with it. Now I feel like I am an expert in the Defender. I know how to work everything. I know where everything is. It's a good car. It was a great car across the country, comfortable, easy. It was a great car off-roading when I got there. You know, I have an old Defender, and I love my old Defender, and there's been a lot of complaints from old Defender people. Oh, this is the new Discovery. It's not a real Defender. Well, I mean, maybe not, but I don't need another old Defender. That car's a disaster, and truthfully, its appeal is very limited. It appeals to people like me who are emotionally into cars and who don't mind driving around in something that creaks and rattles and bumps, and it's such a stupid car, and I like that about it, but it's not. I could never take that on a cross-country road trip. I don't even drive it out of the county. Your appeal is very small if you produce a car like that, and I think the new one, much more versatile, much more practical, and honestly, it's better off-road. I don't know. I think it's a great road trip car. There were some things that annoyed me. There were some things that, you know, aren't working, the sunroof, that little weather stripping. It's not perfect, but I think it's pretty good, and I'm happy that I have it. I really am. I have a 100,000-mile warranty on it, 7 years, and I think I'm just going to take it to the end of the warranty. I don't love shopping for daily driver cars. I think it's a lot of stress, and I think I've found one that really, really works well for me. So that's my new Defender. That is the situation. After 7,000 miles, no major flaws, and in fact, quite the opposite. I've really endeared to it. Thanks for watching. More Doug.